Welcome to Trading Ears, the Trader's Edge. I'm Jim Iuorio. That's Bob Iaccino. We are 2/3 of the team at unfilteredinvestor.com. And I know you guys have supported us a great deal on that project, and we appreciate that. I hope you appreciate the work we do, because Bobby and Mike's technicals are unbelievable to me. Bobby, I'm sorry I have a collared shirt on and look all formal. I was on a I did a podcast with someone who, expects a collared shirt before.
We don't do those.
If they
that's last time you're coming on there.
If they pay us, we do. Right. So,
yeah.
When I was leaving the TMZ I've told you this story before, right? When I was leaving my 18-year relationship, and I said to one of the executive producers, I said, "I'm not saying my integrity isn't for sale. I'm just saying you're 2 zeros too short." And I thought that was really funny, but they did not. They did not think that. Yes. So do you think your call here? We have David. Let's talk to David about his fund first, and then we'll break down some markets afterwards. We got a lot of stuff to go today before we get to markets, because I've made some trades today, and I want to know what Bobby's technicals tell me. So I want to get to, we're going to cover Micron, we're going to cover SMH, we're going to cover all the indexes. But before we do, let's bring in David Meyers, who will tell us all about his fund, which I think is amazing. I couldn't remember if it was Meyers or Meyer. Which one is there? Is S on the end or no?
Yeah, there's an S. Apparently, I'm multiple people sometimes. I got a lot of.
Well, you got to buy that. You say David Meyers Fund. David Meyers Fund is what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, right. You can just blend it all together. Yeah. I see the baseball.
Gentlemen, good to see you guys.
I don't know if I told you this before, but your coach out there in Seattle Mariners, I played against him in high school.
Dan
I did tell you that before, right? Dan Wilson, and but I believe I stole bases against him. But to be fair, to be fair, I was a senior and he was a freshman. If I can't steal bases off someone who's a freshman when I'm a senior, I mean, I think I could have stole off of Johnny Bench when he was 14 years old. To be clear, and that's not saying that I was great or anything.
Dan Wilson's awesome. I'm actually a pretty big fan of him. The Mariner fan base is not right now because we're playing pretty poorly, and they're blaming that all on him. But man, I don't know what you're supposed to do if your team just doesn't hit.
I mean, other than that pitcher management, it's not that much the manager. I mean, all he can do is set up the lineup card and maybe tweak the batting order. But other than that, pitching management, that's pretty much it. And back in the day, that didn't matter. Guy pitched 9 innings. That was that.
But also, David, comment on this too. I always argue that baseball is as much an individual sport as tennis is. You're always alone. And everything you're doing, you're alone. When you're up to bat, nobody's helping you. Even when you're hitting a cutoff man, it's a system. He's supposed to be in a specific spot. It doesn't matter who's there, right?
Yeah. No, I 100% agree. But baseball is kind of going over to analytics a lot, and you got a bunch of guys just swinging for the fences every swing, and the strikeout rate is insane. So it kind of there's a lot of stuff that I think actually matters above the manager, because if they're forcing guys to take, let's just say an 0-2 count, right? Let's just say it's J-Rod, Julio Rodriguez, the best player over in Seattle. And, traditionally, the way we grow up is, you might choke up a little bit on the bat. You're trying to make contact, get a piece of the ball. And realistically, nowadays, the heavily analytic teams are just swing again, full-fledged, full force power. You're trying to go dinger no matter what. Now,
one of my favorite players in the Cubs in history was Anthony Rizzo. I mean, obviously that's recent history. I've been watching the Cubs since the 70s, but Rizzo used to do that. Anytime he had 2 strikes, you could see this much of the bottom of his bat. It was really cool to see, because you just don't see that anymore. And they used to play the shift on him before that was outlawed, right? They played the shift on him until there were 2 strikes. Then they'd cover the whole field, because he would just hack it into left field and get a single out of it. And I don't know. I mean,
watching him bunt one down the third base line when they did that to him. I think he got a double out of it, but don't quote me.
But I mean, before we get to markets, the last thing for me about baseball is these like Kyle Schwarber is a great example of it. And I love Kyle Schwarber because he had some really key hits in 2016 when the Cubs won the World Series. But him on the Phillies, he's one of the fastest players ever to 300 home runs, and he just crushes the ball, but he's hitting 238.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
his OPS, his on base percentage is like, I'm going to say like 400. And so his OPS is consistently like in the mid nines, which you know what that, Bobby, I'm not, this is relative to you. I'm not saying, you know what it is, right? You know, on base percentage plus slugging. Yeah, of course you do. Right. So Kyle Schwarber's a Hall of Famer, despite the fact that he strikes out a lot because he walks a shit ton too.
He does walk a lot. And it's the one thing I was going to finish
that I'm like, analytics are all right with that guy because he goes up, he bombs like a traditional, like, I know Jim Tome's batting average was way higher, but he kind of is in the model of those old bombers who you put in the cleanup spot and they just crush. And that's what you're looking for. That's
I cut you off too, Bobby.
No, it's what I was going to say is the current baseball climate is similar to current basketball climate, where, you know, now it's a really cool move to shoot a step back three. You know, there's guys out there that were saying, well, Jordan didn't have a step back three. It's like, you telling me, you watch some of the things Michael Jordan did, and you tell me he couldn't have figured out a step back three. It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. But baseball, I still enjoy, even though I don't enjoy the NBA anymore with the 3-pointers.
Yeah.
Because you still have the double play, which to me is one of the prettiest things in sports.
There's things that like, every generation is going to look back and be like, oh, that drives me nuts. Like, I can't stand seeing a catcher put his knee down when there's a runner in scoring position. That drives me bonkers because you are not as able to block a pitch. But, you know, with other analytics, they're saying that strike matters way more than being able to block a pitch because of the rarity with which the ball's going to get past them versus, the chance that, he frames a pitch. And even though we have ABS these days, I don't understand it anymore. Yeah. But we're always.
By the way, with some of our neighbors here in my little town of Palatine, the Huntleys, Randy and Todd, there was a court case because Todd Huntley gave his dad like $100,000 as a gift when he started making big bucks because he was probably a roidhead. But anyway, so it went to court. They said no, it was payment for teaching him the one-handed catching method, which Randy Huntley was the one who pioneered back in the 60s and 70s. Did you know that, or am I telling you anything?
I did not know that. No, that's new to me.
Yeah. He's from Palatine. So is Glenn Becker, two of the 69 Cubs. By the way, this show, sometimes we talk about markets, people. Let's go to markets. We can talk about baseball all day, but let's go to markets because I think there's something very fascinating. David is going to tell us right now about the concept for his fund, which I loved the first time I heard it a year and a half ago, and we've talked about it on our show a few times. We've directed some people to it. Tell us what it is you do and why.
Well, we specialize in taking advantage of contango and volatility ETFs. And I love it because, to me, it's one of the very few things in markets that are certain. Like, I don't have to be right about a lot of things. Like, I'll tell you things that I might be wrong on right now. Like, for example, I'm kind of on this soapbox about AI being the fastest to zero revenues. We'll get into that if you guys want to. But I could be dead wrong about that, but I'm not going to be wrong about contango. It's going to happen. It's just a matter of, how fast contango affects these ETPs and drives them to zero. And we stay in our little niche. Can
I interject in case some of the people don't understand? So here's what he's talking about is that the funds that are leveraged funds, they have optionality. And they have to roll up their futures and options, and they roll them up often to higher prices. And because of that, there's a built-in decay of these funds. Is that a good way to explain it?
Yeah, that's a perfect way. These ETPs are constantly rolling forward their futures contracts and, losing that premium that they're paying for, 2 months out when they sell them near dated. And instead of, like, ProShares is one of the companies, instead of taking the loss in their pocket, they just roll that loss into the price of the ETFs themselves.
Right.
And we just take advantage of that because it's, it's always going to happen. It's just like, death and taxes. There's always going to be a premium paid for future contracts. When you sell them up close, you're always going to take a loss if you don't have a hedge or something to counteract that.
And do you have a hedge? Like, let's say you're short some of these products and something just absolutely explodes. What's your hedge to keep you from getting it in the nards?
It's our golden rule. We always have VIX calls, which is ironic because, that's what they're buying to try to track the VIX. But we always have VIX calls to protect us because it'll outperform these things to the upside. So we always have a portion of our portfolio as protection in VIX calls. so that if it should skyrocket, it actually turns into more of a lottery ticket, because we're going to make more on those VIX calls than we end up losing should, these ETPs go up with the VIX. So we're always, that's the number one. It's our golden rule, actually. We don't even ever short the ETPs without having our VIX hedge in that period.
David, I asked you this last time we had you on the show talking about VIXY, and what is the scenario? Describe the scenario where you guys don't do well.
I mean, I get that question a lot, and I don't like to answer because it sounds too good to be true. If
you need to make one up, buddy, no one's gonna.
Yeah, I know. Well, you know what? I will say this. One scenario that I wasn't in this, but the Nigerian brothers broke VXX for a minute. Because they have their they were on CNBC and they have their newsletter, and they were telling everybody to buy VXX calls. Well, there was more VIX because they have such a huge following. There were more people out there buying all these calls that are obviously 100 to 1 than there were actually shares available. So the owners of VXX actually untethered it for a while. So it unnaturally squeezed the price higher. And that's an absolute pitfall. Like that could happen. Somebody else throws out, that has a huge following, tells people to buy a bunch of calls at a certain strike or whatever. That could happen. And they untethered VXX. That could happen again.
So so this has been going on now for almost 2 years, right? That you've been doing it and opened it up. Tell us about
2024.
Yeah. Tell us about how it worked out.
Lovely. We haven't had any, very few, minimal down sides at all. And we just kind of keep plugging along. We just keep hitting singles and doubles. And again, we maintain our golden rule. We always have protection no matter what. And we do our best to make sure that our protection, that we can roll it forward. Like if we get a bounce on the VIX, so our calls are worth more, we try to take that opportunity to roll them forward so we're not losing on them. And we always stay hedged, and we stay true to our one scenario, because to me it's not a matter of if these things are going to stay in contango. It's just a matter of how long and how much you get out of it.
So how many of these different ETFs are you essentially shorting at one time? My question, is it a diversification strategy?
Yeah, we just diversify. It can be one at a time sometimes, but usually it's 3 short and 1 long, because SVXY, you can actually go long on that. And it tries to take advantage of contango for you. It's not great at it, to be frank with you, but it all depends on how deep we are in a particular trade. And because if we're only dipping our toes in and we're 25%, in on a particular trade or position, that's going to be one ETF at a time. But then as we get bigger and bigger, we spread that out amongst the ETFs themselves.
How much do you guys invest in crypto in your fund, David?
No. No. Yeah, I'm not a crypto guy. I was excited to talk to you about that, because I've been this way since 2008 and 2009 when I first heard about them. And people that know that I'm in the market, they always ask me, did you make a killing on crypto? No, I wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole, and I wouldn't touch it with your 10-foot pole. And it always goes off, and it's a fun conversation because you run into the people that absolutely love it, that are hardcore advocates. And I like having the conversation, because I don't like to tell people they're wrong. I don't tell them they're wrong. It's just my view of it is I'm not a fan. I just.
All right. So let me set this up if I could, sure, Jim, because I don't know if you were paying attention to this. David and I kind of went through a little thing where I think David might have thought I was a fan of crypto in general. So just because I like David so much, I wanted to kind of go back and forth with him a little. On Twitter, we went back and forth, and I finally said, we should come on the show and talk about this. So I've spoken at, I think, 4 crypto conferences in the last probably 8 months, right? Yeah. Oddly enough, one was a separate group, and then there was 3 with the same group, where I had their annual big conference, spoke at that. Then there was one of their smaller conferences. Then there was one of their meetups, right? And I spoke at all 3 of those. And at all 3 of those conferences, I took the same position. I was the skeptic, right? Now, I have invested in crypto before. Actually, I should rephrase that. I've traded crypto. I've traded Bitcoin. I've never touched ETH. but I've traded Bitcoin. And what I told them at the last conference, and if anyone was at that conference, you can come into our comments and vouch for me on that, it was July 1st. Okay. And on July 1st, I said, I'm still not an advocate of crypto being your largest investment. But if you're going to accumulate, the time to accumulate is right now. That was July. That was the evening of July 1st. So July 1st was and I'm not patting myself on the back. I'm setting up this conversation. Okay. Even though I do enjoy patting myself on the back.
Same.
But since that, it's up through today 5.7%. And if you go from the close of July 1st to the high of that move, it was about 11.6%. Now, I also told them the same thing that I've told them at every conference. How many of you own crypto? They all raise their hand. How many of you only own crypto? And about maybe 5-6% of them lowered their hands. The rest of them all only own crypto. And I said the same thing. You are the guys I'm worried about, right? So I want to sort of, Jim, I want you and me to take the sort of, I understand why people own crypto, and David to take there's in no fucking way should anybody own crypto side.
That's kind of where I'm at, to be honest with you, but that's okay.
No, I want to do this. And we don't.
I'll start because I put about 2% of my investable into Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, and what's the fourth one? Ripple. So anyway, so it grew to like 5% of my investable, which I thought was too much, and I was uncomfortable with that. So far, that problem has kind of corrected itself without me having to do anything. So it's gone back down. I've still made quite a bit of money in it. Here's what I think is that everything. Okay, so if you say crypto is, again, David, to be clear, if you put a gun to my head and said in 10 years, do you think it's more likely crypto's $1 million or crypto's zero? I think it's more likely that it's zero. That's what I'm saying, more likely. But if it's not, the risk reward seemed attractive to me. Now, what I convinced myself is that, okay, a Picasso, a baseball card, a $2,000 bottle of wine, all of these things trade wildly above their intrinsic value, their value. Just it's the value that people put on them. And as it grows and people keep putting value on this, countries like El Salvador adopt it as their currency. BlackRock, Fidelity, they all getting into the space. The deeper its roots get, the harder it is to uproot. I will say this also as my final thing is that the big move lower over the last, I think it's been close to a year, whenever it was, move lower, and then it paused and held, and it's held it for quite some time. I think if crypto was going to take the knockout punch, it would have taken it right then, and it didn't. David, your counterpoint.
All right. So I'll go with I'm kind of going to come at it from a different angle of what is cryptocurrency, period. And I'm going to have to pick on Bitcoin, even though, it just because it's the biggest name, it was the first one that we kind of.
That's what I think the conversation should be about.
So what is cryptocurrency in its nature? And it is really just a bunch of code somewhere, something. There's no actual tangible thing, like you mentioned, because the best way that I could understand it is if you were talking about baseball cards, because baseball cards are what we deem their worth, right? Like I would love to have a Mickey Mantle card or a Babe Ruth card, and
you're the best guy to talk about this with because of that.
Yeah, so I love that stuff, but like those are tangible assets in your hand. These are a bunch of ones and zeros somewhere. Okay, and no. We still go back to the idea that it is what we say it's worth. Well, technically, that's not true either. Just because of one reason, and I'll go to this. This is where I've hung my hat even since 2009. Like when people were, enjoying these rides up, and I've told how dumb I was many a times because I was voicing my opinion against it. What I saw was hundreds and thousands of people telling me, oh, you need to go buy this. And then they do these videos about how terrible crypto or fiat currency is and the faith of the US dollar, blah, blah, blah. And that it will become the fiat that we all use someday. Well, that was 17 years ago. Yeah. And it's still not a viable way to buy and sell things. Now, if you want to go to what you can buy and sell, then we'll go to, all right, now there's the stable coins of the world, right? But what makes that valuable?
The dollar.
It's not the coin itself, it's the money that backs it, right? So it's backed with $1 per $1 of stable coin. So it still goes back to, all right, something has to back these things to make them worth anything. Otherwise, it's literally just code or a bunch of people telling other people to buy it. And then you're looking at, all right, is this a pyramid scheme? Because that's quite frankly what I think it is the closest thing to a pyramid scheme. Because one, I looked up the definition. I even wrote it down for this conversation. The definition of a pyramid scheme is that recruitment-based earnings. Well, I mean, that's how we saw, and you guys saw this. You guys saw hundreds and thousands of people trying to talk other people into buying it, right? Mm-hmm. That is what initially rose the price of, Bitcoin and other, cryptos out there. All right, next, unsustainable structure. All right, I would argue that there's nothing holding it up. It's literally a matter of, all right, if more people continue to buy it, then the price goes up. But if they don't, then we're just looking at the analytics of a chart, which I understand the analytics of a chart, and I'm all for that. Top heavy payouts. Well, the early adapters are the ones who made all the money, right? The people that were buying it at $2,000 a coin, talking more people into buying it or mine it, whatever. No legitimate product. Again, it's ones and zeros. And then finally, exponential growth requirement. You will always need, for Bitcoin to grow, you will always need more people buying it than selling it. Because there's nothing else. It's not like we have earnings behind it. There's nothing tangible behind it, So I would argue that it is just a straight up pyramid scheme that will never be adopted at mass because, what was it? Ecuador you mentioned earlier?
El Salvador.
Yeah. El Salvador, I believe they adopted it like 2 years ago. And I think the vast majority of people that started it, you can still use it at most of the places, but you still can't, the vast majority of people there still prefer the US dollar to transact with.
All right. So first I want to put up this comment by Hash Over Cash. Okay. This is not the argument I'm going to take. And we know Hash. He's not disrespectful. So I wouldn't read this.
That's all right. That's exactly.
He has a thick skin.
Yeah. This guy does not know how Bitcoin is created. It's backed by the world's largest supercomputer generated through energy, proof of work. Don't confuse Bitcoin with Ethereum, XRP, and the rest. Fair enough. That's not the argument I want to make. Okay. And by the way, before I make a little bit of my argument, I own 0 Bitcoin right now. As a matter of fact, I own 0 cryptocurrency right now. I'm heavy into gold. I've said this before. My target price for gold is 7,800. All right. Yeah. That's not next week. All right. I personally believe that, especially now that we see the U.S. trying to hold up Japan's currency along with the Bank of Japan.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're going to get to a point where Japan's going to have to sell treasuries, and then the U.S. is going to have to borrow more, and gold is going to double. But I'm sticking with my 7,800 that I mathematically came up with that number. I didn't pull it out of the air, and we don't have time to go over how I did that.
No, I got you.
It was really essentially a debasement of the currency multiplied by the amount of gold out there. It was a whole big thing. Anyway, first of all, Bitcoin is a lot more user-friendly than guys like us realize. Okay, there is actually the Lightning Network, which makes it faster. And there are actually, I'll call these people middlemen, but there's actually markets that take Bitcoin and nothing else. You can buy almost anything with Bitcoin. And I say that it's a middleman because somebody acquires it with dollars and then sells it to you for Bitcoin. The currency, it actually exists as a usable currency in places that the three of us would never visit. And I'm not talking about the dark web. And I'm learning this from going to these Bitcoin conferences. And I own no Bitcoin. Okay. Yeah. The second thing I would say is, and I'm going to ask you what I consider to be a sensitive question. You might call me a dick, and I'd be happy with that.
No.
When you make money in VIXY, what's the tangible thing you're touching?
I'm not arguing that is an. So the VIX yourself, you're right.
You're taking advantage of the situation.
Is just ETPs.
You're taking advantage. I love your fund, but you're taking advantage of something that isn't tangible. And your Mickey Mantle card example, right, is valuable to you. And I would argue it's not valuable. And to me, by the way, if you give me a Gale Sayers rookie football card, I'll defend it with all my guns, right? But it's not valuable to probably 80% of the world. But that doesn't mean it doesn't have value, right? and it's tangible until there's a fire, right? Hatch over Calf just said Jack Dorsey enabled it earlier this year, but every Square terminal. Luis, can you put these two up, please? Every Square terminal is accepting Bitcoin payment now. Jack Dorsey enabled it earlier this year. Whatever. I mean, it is spendable.
I know that Square does that. I do know that.
Yeah, it's spendable in places we wouldn't go. So what I would say is the fact that that you can't actually reach out and touch it doesn't necessarily make it not tangible, because your fund generates real wealth, and
but Bobby, his fund is taking advantage
of it's not tangible.
Over enthusiasm. But he's taking advantage. But his fund is taking advantage of someone else's enthusiasm, like a leveraged fund. You know what I mean? So saying you guys are too enthusiastic, sold, and you do it across the board every time you make money. So he's talking about things you hold, and things, little arbitrages are different animals, in my opinion. But that just, I'll shut up. Yeah.
Well, I get your point about being tangible. Things that you can't touch. That's all I'm saying. I think the people who are making money on Bitcoin are also taking advantage of people's over exuberance, which is kind of what the pyramid is. And by the way, VIXY is not a pyramid. It's a trading strategy, right? Yeah. It's trading in what eventually ends up being a tangible asset, right? Mm-hmm. But I would also argue that stocks aren't really tangible assets, right? You take Meta, for example, right? It doesn't matter how many shares of Meta that you own. You cannot outvote Zuckerberg. Can't do it.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of places where these non-tangible assets, you don't even get a fucking stock.
So if we're talking about Meta, like there is an earnings power behind that. That's what.
Right, but we can't touch it. We don't ever get it.
But it's tangible. Does that make sense?
It does. It does, and I see what you're saying. But as an investor,
just like the U.S. dollar itself, like
GM had earnings,
the U.S. government and the taxes that are applied, but I don't get to touch those things.
I mean, GM had earnings, but it eventually went to zero. Lehman Brothers had earnings, but it's what's the word I'm looking for? Its liabilities were bigger than its earnings.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's just what I wanted to throw out.
Interesting discussion. And again, I don't disagree with anything anyone said. The whole thing that I bought crypto was in case I'm wrong, in case it really is something.
It's like why a lot of agnostics believe in God.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. If I was in a foxhole, you better believe I'd be praying to God. You cover your bases, right? So
this isn't me calling people dumb that are believers of it. I want to be very clear about that. You guys can disagree with me. It doesn't hurt my feelings whatsoever. It's just one of those things that from the very get-go, I mean, I'm not dumb. I understand the arguments. I understand the use cases a lot. The problem is, to me, is that there's nothing behind it. And because there's nothing behind it, it doesn't necessarily make it valuable. What makes it valuable is just more people believing in it than don't.
And believe
you'll hear like when you compare that to a company or a stock or a fiat currency, all those other things, eventually they have something behind it.
Well, the crypto people argued to me that the dollar has nothing behind it. And I said, well, how do you pay your taxes? That's what it has behind it, is that it's accepted if Bitcoin is ever accepted to pay your taxes, it's now on equal footing to fiat currency, in my view. That still doesn't mean I buy it.
Say that again.
If the U.S. government ever said we will accept Bitcoin as payment for your taxes, now it has the same tangible thing behind it that the U.S. dollar.
Well, no, because I said one time in an argument with Peter Schiff that nuclear warheads and flat top, and aircraft carriers back the U.S. dollar. He's like, what? They're going to bomb somebody for not taking the U.S. dollar? Yes, they're going to have a million times bomb somebody for financial reasons. Are you a lunatic? But anyway, so yeah.
By the way, I hold gold for the exact reason, David, that you're saying that people shouldn't hold Bitcoin, because I can hold the gold in my hand, and I don't own gold ETFs.
You know that there's gold behind it somewhere.
Yeah, I don't own gold ETFs. I own physical gold.
Yeah.
So I trade futures and I hold physical gold. I don't own GLD.
Okay, two things real quick. This is the part. Don't put the banner up yet, Luis. This is the part of the show where we have a natural break. But before we do, David, tell the people where they can find you, invest in your fund. Because like I said before, I think it is such an unbelievable, non-correlated thing. Really, and I think it's fantastic. So tell people how they can contact you.
Thank you so much. Now, to be honest, I didn't come on here hoping to talk about my company, but
I did. Yeah.
I know. I just VIXYHedge.com. just like it sounds, VIXY, hedge.com. And you can feel free to reach out to us. We love to talk and see if we might be a good fit. Now, I will always say this. I have never been a proponent of, I want you to throw your entire net worth into our fund. But if you like to diversify, maybe find a place to, to have some non-market correlated money, maybe we're your huckleberry if you're an accredited investor. But yeah, it's just, it's something that I love to do, and it's something that I understand well. So it's something that I like staying in my lane on that. And
something else I think you should mention, David, you have zero maintenance fee. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, we're straight up 80-20 and no maintenance fees, because we just, we get our
honestly, where do you get that? I mean, you get that almost nowhere in the legacy funds. Nowhere.
Yeah. Well, the big funds, they can, they have huge, companies behind them and tons of assets. And we're confident enough in our strategy. We know we're going to make money, so we're not going to, go and nickel and dime people to make sure that our rent is paid. If that makes any sense.
Love it. Okay, we are going to goodbye, David. And the second half of the show is going to be Bobby and I are going to break down a couple markets like we said before. But David, I'm so glad you were here. Thank you very much. It's always good.
Thank you very much.
Talk to you. Luis, can you put up the banner? This is the part of the show where I ask you guys for a favor. Please scan the QR code that's coming up here and try for free, no charge. Try for free Tradier Pro for 3 months. It's their options trading platform, which we've talked to people who've been trading options for decades, some just for days, and they all say the same thing. It's intuitive. It is the spot you want to be to learn about options and to trade options. And do it as a favor to us. We greatly appreciate it. Just scan that QR code. And now back to the show. Bobby, I made 2 trades. Well, I made 3 trades today, and I'll tell you why each one. Bought Micron. Can we put up Micron first or no?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Hold on a second. Still a couple of comments, but I'm gonna sort of end that conversation for a second.
Sure.
Micron.
MU. You know it's MU. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no problem. All right, let me put this up here. Luis, can you put this up as soon as I share the screen, please?
Okay, but I'll talk while it's coming up, because I'm not particularly overly bullish on the chip sector. For me, this was something that looked interesting from a technical play because it was kind of rounded a little bit, came out of a consolidation pattern right at the same time, was going above all the moving averages we like. I know they are not sloped higher yet. Do you think this is a good idea, bad idea, or neutral idea?
I guess time frame wise, it would interest me time frame wise what you're looking at, but I will say there's a sort of non-proper percentage B buy here. Okay, and what I mean by that is you've got negative % B down here. You can see on the left it's minus 0.2, right?
Yep.
And then today we got a positive with rising volume, which Mike doesn't look at, but I like to see that, right, with higher volume than the previous day.
Right.
And we got a close above the high of the previous day. But it's a negative close, meaning that it closed lower than it's open.
Right. So
that just leaves me with a situation where I'd rather see a pullback that holds. But I think, again, it's about your hold time on this. It's Micron.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's breaking back out of what would consider to be sort of a rounding bottom here.
Right.
I just would like to see that hold.
Sure. And again, it's something that I want to own. That's why I probably jumped the gun on it, because I do want to own it. I don't think chips are going away. It's had a substantial pullback, so I've had it on my radar. And again, SMH, if you can pop over to that too, it's again for pretty much the same reason as Micron. It's for you guys who don't know, SMH is the chips, like AMD's in there. Micron's actually in there, so I doubled up on this trade. But I bought them both, and probably if I get any sort of good positive movement in the next couple of days, I'll probably slap a decent hedge on them and then let it ride. You want to put SMH up?
Sure.
Yeah.
Texting my apology to David to make sure he didn't get upset with what I said.
Oh no, he's a thick-skinned guy. He loves that kind of thing,
good.
I think.
Yeah, he's a good guy.
Yeah. So this one, because it kind of was dealing with a little consolidation pattern all above the moving averages. Boom, it went above it. It had a huge pullback. Thoughts? Same thing.
So a couple things here. We don't have that percentage B situation. Everything's been above the line, and you've got a decline here along with declining volume. I don't like how these continually finish lower than they're open.
Yep.
That just shows innate weakness on a day-to-day, on a day-to-day basis. So if you look at some of the other semiconductor stocks, I suspect they're not recovering yet just because of this. When you get these situations, like you'll see it here, right? You get a gap open up and then it closes lower. Gap open up and it closes lower. Gap open up and it closes lower. Now that was against all the moving averages. Well, the ones I like to look at. And then you got an extension down. Your best thing here is that you're above the 50, and that's always a good thing. And the 50 is flat, the 21 is flat, the 8 is flat, so it's not really giving you any sort of resistance or support.
No, the 8 is the one that's sloping up.
Well, ish.
Okay.
Right? I mean, you look at the 8 here, and it's sloping up from down here, but right here it's kind of flattening because, again,
oh yeah, I got you. Yeah,
it's only because it's selling off of its opens, which means there's no volume on that, so I like it.
Yeah.
But when it's selling off of its opens, that means there's people that are looking for spikes to sell it, right?
Right.
And that's what I don't like to see, but it is above its moving averages. So if the moving averages continue to turn up, or I should say start to turn up aggressively, that'll hold it up.
Okay. Okay. I like it. Now I made a trade in the ES today too, that I think I want to know what your opinion of it too, because there's something that I think is really, really interesting happening here. No, I mean, ES. I'm in yeah, you know what I mean.
No, I know. Every time I put an ES and hit enter, it goes to Eversource.
So I look at this. Is that okay? So clearly it's above the moving averages. They're all sloped higher, but it's in this just nasty, tight consolidation pattern that's lasted, what, about 5 or 6 bars, right? So I sold calls right at the top, the highest level of all the bodies there. I sold one of those calls to buy 2 calls further out, 0.5% above it. And I paid money for this. My thesis is that when it busts out of that, it could bust out of that with some momentum. And then the higher calls, which I have more of, come into play. It's a bullish play. But to me, it seems like when those things break, it could go pretty well. That's exactly what I'm looking at. Thoughts?
Love it. If you would have done this in the outright futures, I wouldn't like it.
Right.
But this is generally, so there's a couple things here. This type of sideways consolidation with declining volume, they tend to break out up. So what the volume is telling you is that the market is looking for another catalyst, right? Okay, what else you got? Inflation didn't do it. Earnings are slowing down, right? What else you got is basically what the market's saying.
Right.
And, when I look at this declining volume, it's essentially showing disinterest to me. It's not showing a negative pattern at all. We're getting a sideways correction with reduced volume. These patterns are genuinely continuation patterns. Continuing what? Continuing this move.
Yeah.
So I really like that trade a lot. If you would have said to me that you did it in the futures themselves, I wouldn't like it.
Yeah, no.
Because
I put that cap on it. Yeah.
We used to trade a model, we called it volatility expansion, right? And this is the volatility compression that we do want to trade. And what we would do here is we'd have a buy stop and a sell stop, right? I would not, to enter a buy in and a sell in. I would not want to buy or sell here, but if you held a gun to my head, it would be a buy. Why? These levels here, right? This whole consolidation, even if it breaks out, it's going to pause here, right? It's going to pause right around, what would that be? 76.24. And then that would be right into the rotation zone, which would likely take it back up. So I like the upside on this a lot.
And if we get an explosive move, I probably change those upside calls into call spreads. I'll sell. That's the first level of profit I'll take, would be to sell above calls if it explodes through it, and then manage it from there. Let's go to oil. Is that okay?
Yeah. And then I want to go through a bunch of these chats that we got here because
please.
Hopefully David's still listening because I want to take his side for a minute, but go ahead. Again, Colgate-Palmolive. Every time I do that, it goes right to the stock. I don't know why.
Yep.
All right.
I hate that this chart looks good to me. Tell me why it shouldn't.
I see nothing here really. So I drew these Gann fans. These are Gann fans, but I drew them as individual trend lines. When you go down here, you'll notice that the space between these coincide to the Gann levels. We need to get above this trend line. It's not a strong trend line. It's likely going to take us right about to here. And then you got all this resistance here to get through. And then all of the moving averages are essentially flat. So this particular chart is telling me absolutely nothing. It's not telling me up or down. I don't have a crude trade on right now. I always love to have a crude trade on, but I don't have one right now.
Yeah. And again, I will caution everybody who's watching too, and a lot of you, because this is a market that is largely driven by headline risk more than technical factors, and I don't play it big at all. Just by the way, so yeah. What else you want to look at?
So I want to look here. Something what I mean about the chip stocks. Okay, I'm going to put up AMD.
Sure.
And then maybe after this we can go to the chat.
Yeah.
I own quite a bit of AMD. Okay. And I've got that same percentage B pattern here, right? I've got a close above the previous day's high with a negative turning positive. All right. But it's a down candle. And you could see here, gap open higher, sold off, gap open, sold off, gap higher, sold off, gap higher, sold off. Although this was less of a sell-off than these other ones were, right?
Yep.
I don't like that. My stop is a close below this dashed line on this particular trade. Although, because I don't want to be one of those people that puts on a trade and then turns it into a long-term hold because it's a good company, right?
Right.
I will short it if we close below this level right here. And you could see the post trade is here. This is also another example why I don't like trading the post or the pre-market, right? If you look at like an hourly chart, so this particular, when I engage the extended hours, it only shows up on short of a daily chart, right?
Yeah.
When it's short of a daily chart, it's selling off in the post market again, right? And I just don't like that particular stuff because the volume is minuscule pre-market and post market. But on a daily basis, I'm in a case now where I just hope it trades up, right? And hope's not a strategy. So once it gets below here, I'd like to see it close. But again, you got the flat moving averages. It needs to break out up with some volume to continue. And I don't have a lot of hope for that happening the way it's trading right now. But PPI tomorrow, still getting peace talks going on Iran and the US. If any of that breaks out, I expect the stocks to break out. We have the September meeting probability of a hike, according to CME Fed Watch Tool, is below 40% for the first time since Warsh has been chairman.
Yeah. So they're not hiking.
No, I don't think they are either. And I don't think they should.
No, neither do I, which, by the way, I don't know if you saw some of the things I put out today. They are factually easing right now by buying short-term bonds. They're increasing their balance sheet. Why would they hike at the same time they're easing? I think it's just, I don't know. It seems like all talk to me. What else you want to look at? By the way, can we talk about gold and silver and why my thesis was that I bought them? Was that last week? Or have we already talked about that or no?
We talked about your silver thesis last week, but let's look at silver.
Yeah. So for those of you who didn't watch last week, which is silly because all of you guys watch every minute, because if you miss it, your whole entire career will be shot. Okay, I started buying silver when I put the pieces together on the Treasury supporting the yen, $20 billion buying the yen. Because the question I was sitting there going, why the hell would they do that? Is they just don't like the yen being a dog? No. Bobby mentioned it a little bit earlier. They're worried that Japan's going to sell some of its $1.1 trillion of Treasury holdings to support their own currency. So our treasurer is like, shit, we better get involved in this so they don't do that. That fear was a reflection of a belief that I think they will do whatever it takes as 10-year yields go higher to keep them from going above 5%. I didn't put any math into that 5%. That's just a gut feel because they've already kind of tipped their hand a little bit. So right when it was coming above the 8 and 21, I bought calls. I bought calls in silver that I still have on. I think it heads up to the 200-day. What do you think?
Yeah, I like it. I mean, I mentioned before, when you put on the silver that I like gold better for this situation.
I do too. I should have put on gold. Yeah.
Well, that's okay. I mean, look, you're making money. I mean, what do we care which one you made money on, right? Silver has rounded, and silver has a little bit of a slight double bottom here. I'm calling it slight because it's not technically perfect, but it's playing out, and it technically also got voided here. One thing I said on the CME trade challenge today, I said the same thing, that just because a pattern has been voided the way we look at it, the probabilities have dropped, doesn't mean it's still going to play out. And we're well above the peak of that right now. And we're above the 50 and they're all starting to turn up. So I think that goes really well. If I look at gold futures, for example, and by the way, I think we put a gold miner ETF in the newsletter this week.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I'm positive we did. And I think it's doing really well. The gold here was when you bought silver and the gold outperformed, and gold is performing just as well right now. I think that thesis and you're part of the reason I bought gold, is because that thesis about Japan, I think that leans much more into gold simply because Japan's involved, right? It just leans much more into the gold story.
Yeah, and there's, by the way, another facet to it as well. So headlines came out that China is accelerating buying its gold, not decelerating like we had thought before. So if China's increasing and the Fed blinked or the Treasury blinked, that whatever, it doesn't matter. The Fed and Treasury, they work. We know they work in unison. I don't know why we have to pretend that they're 100% separate institutions. Yeah.
All right, I want to throw some of these comments up.
Sure.
Because some I agree with and some I don't agree with. The first one, Luis, is hash over cash at 4:33 p.m. Energy and compute. So he says energy and compute is tangible. Don't forget that Bitcoin mining takes excess energy that would otherwise be released into the atmosphere and can stabilize power grids. I don't agree that that's tangible. Okay. I just ordered a Darth Vader Stormtrooper Bears figurine that's going to be printed with a 3D printer that also takes energy. Okay, and it's I'm getting a tangible statue. I'm getting a tangible statue, right?
Yeah,
and it also takes energy that otherwise would be released into the ether. So I don't know that that most people who agree Bitcoin is not tangible would agree that that's tangible. Jimmy?
Yeah, I agree with you, and I agree. Okay, I don't know. It's funny. My daughter always yells at me. She goes, when you are telling people that you don't understand something, you sound like you're authoritative, like you do understand it, which is not what I'm trying to do. I don't understand if Bitcoin's going to be the million or going to be zero. I want to be involved in case it does. Whether we can argue all day whether it's tangible or not tangible, whether hash over cash is right, or whether Dave Meyers is right. Maybe they both are right and wrong, and there's a combination of both. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, okay, so here, and this is what I was hope David was going to say when I said what VIXY trades is not tangible. He should have said, well, it's backed by tens of thousands of people that trade it every day. Those people all, but it's different than Bitcoin because literally if you said the VIX, 1 million out of 1 million people who have heard of it said, yeah, that's real,
Yeah.
because it is an actual.
I hope you're saying, yeah, that's why I sell it.
Exactly. Well, there you go. That too. So then Hash Over Cash said, I hold gold too, Bob, which I was very happy to read when he put it up there. And then its stock charts, our boy Remo said 7 to 10% global population owns crypto. Less than 1% uses it to buy and sell everyday items. Very good point by Remo as well. Then Hash Over Cash put, how many people use gold to buy and sell everyday items? Don't forget that. Don't forget Iran settled its fees in the Strait of Hormuz through Bitcoin. All their stablecoin and Tether got seized, frozen. So here's what I would argue with that on David's side of this as well. That just shows you Bitcoin's used by criminals. At least that's what the administration.
By the way, it's not a reason for me not to own it, Bobby.
Agreed.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
I own US dollars. And
that's used by criminals too, right?
Yeah. Who's the guy from Colombia that's dead, the big drug lord?
Oh, El Chapo.
Yeah, El Chapo. He had a lot of US dollars, and I still hold dollars, right?
Yeah, so. Exactly. That's why when I hear that criminals are using Bitcoin, to me, it's like, oh, then maybe I want to get into more Bitcoin. Again, we can't stop criminals. I just want to be involved with something that price is going higher. Right. That to me, that's a silly argument against.
And then Hash Over Cash apologized for blowing up the feed with Bitcoin, but that's an apology I don't accept.
Yeah, we don't accept your apology. We like
want that in there. Jimmy's frozen to me. I don't know if I'm frozen or if Jimmy. There you go. You're back.
I'm frozen. I was frozen.
Well, you were, but go ahead.
Was it in a good spot, like a cool looking?
No, it was terrible.
It's always like
you didn't also not. It was exactly like that. And you didn't also not accept Hash's apology. Like I didn't accept his apology.
I don't accept your apology either, Hash. We want you on the show. We want you yelling at us if we are wrong. Do we have time for anything else, or you want to wrap?
No, I think we're good.
Okay, this has been a fun show. I enjoyed it.
Yeah,
remember, David Meyers, that hedge fund is very, very interesting to me. It's VIXYhedge.com. Again, we have not done huge, deep due diligence on it. To me, David seems like a straight shooter, and I like him quite a bit. Yeah, so maybe you guys check it out and do your own due diligence. I'm Jim Iuorio, and that's Bob Iaccino.
By the way, real quick, Jimmy.
Sure.
I just reposted just before the show started somebody did an AI video of like AOC and Elon Musk about to have a baby. It's spectacularly funny.
I will retweet it for you for sure. The last thing I was going to say, when baseball, back to our original conversation, when I see people swinging for the fences and not worried about the strikeout, I think that performance enhancing drugs are perhaps back in the game. Does that ever go off in your head too, where it all of a sudden becomes a power game again?
Yeah, it does. And I tell you, we left out Widge's comment from way earlier, Luis. I don't know if you see it, but he said, I don't miss baseball. I miss the way I used to feel about baseball. And I get that.
That's
right.
Sweet.
It's an expensive game, Jimmy. You still go to Wrigley a lot. You're a couple hundred in just to sit in the bleachers. It's insane.
No question. Yeah. And I'll be there again on Friday. Yeah.
I think they're back. I do.
Yeah. Yeah. So I like baseball because on a beautiful day, again, Wrigley Field is a museum. Wrigley Field, you can feel the ghosts of 100 years ago players there. I think it is such a spectacular place to be.
If you want, I watched Moneyball again the other day. Just such a fantastic movie. And I always kind of get goosebumps at that scene where Brad Pitt, who's playing Billy Bean, after they come back and get the 11-10 victory to keep the streak going or get the record. And he goes, how can you not be romantic about baseball?
We say it all the time in this house.
I got goosebumps and I butchered it. So
yeah, I love it. All right. Thank you guys so much for watching us. I'm Jim Iuorio. That's Bob Iaccino. This has been Trade Ears, the Trader's Edge. Please also join us at unfilteredinvestor.com, of which Bobby and I are two of the three people who are authors. Thank you guys so much.
You know how the financial world goes. Here comes the buzzkill. Please make sure to take some time to read this boring disclaimer. We will owe you one.